Manhattan is not just another piece of land. From a distance, it appears almost insignificant, a narrow island, barely 21 kilometers long, wedged between two rivers on the eastern coast of North America. Yet this sliver of rock exerts an influence that reaches into nearly every corner of human civilization. Every second, fortunes are made and erased here. Pension funds rise and fall. Governments watch interest rates. Corporations decide where factories will be built, where jobs will disappear, and where billions of dollars will flow next. The island has become something more than geography. It has become a control panel for the modern world. Today, the New York Stock Exchange anchors almost $40 trillion in market capitalization. Around it orbit investment banks, hedge funds, insurance giants, rating agencies, and financial institutions whose decisions ripple across continents. A trader pressing a button in Lower Manhattan can influence whether a family in Ohio retires comfortably, whether a factory in Vietnam expands production, or whether an emerging nation can afford to service its debt. Entire populations live downstream from decisions made on this tiny island. But there is a question hidden beneath all that glass and steel. What happens if the foundation itself fails? Because beneath the sidewalks, beneath the subway tunnels, beneath the skyscrapers that symbolize modern capitalism, there is another force at work. A force older than finance, older than civilization, older than humanity itself. The bedrock beneath Manhattan. The timber frontier. The story begins long before stock exchanges and skyscrapers. In the mid-17th century, Manhattan was not the center of a global empire. It was a muddy colonial outpost known as New Amsterdam. Life was uncertain. European powers competed violently for territory. Indigenous nations resisted encroachment. Disease, conflict, and scarcity defined daily existence. Fear ruled the settlement. In 1653, Director General Peter Stuyvesant ordered the construction of a defensive wall along the northern edge of the colony. The labor was brutal. Enslaved Africans and indentured colonists dragged massive oak trunks through mud and marshland. Trees were felled, sharpened, and driven into the earth to form a wooden barrier against potential invasion. The wall stretched across the settlement. It was meant to keep danger out. Yet history has a strange habit of transforming physical structures into symbols. The wall eventually disappeared, but its location remained. And over time, that geographic line became one of the most powerful addresses on Earth. Wall Street. The name itself survives as a fossil of fear, a reminder that wealth first emerges through exclusion. You build a fence, then you decide who gets access. The birth of financial power. By 1792, the wall was gone. In its place stood a young republic hungry for growth. 24 brokers gathered beneath a buttonwood tree and signed what became known as the Buttonwood Agreement. At first, it seemed insignificant, just a handful of merchants agreeing to trade securities among themselves. But the agreement created something revolutionary, a marketplace where ownership itself could be bought and sold. Capital became liquid, risk became tradable, and wealth became scalable. The consequences were immense. The financial system that emerged helped fund canals, railroads, factories, and westward expansion. It accelerated industrial growth at a pace never before seen, but it also financed darker ambitions. Plantations expanded. Cotton production exploded. Millions of enslaved people were trapped inside an economic machine whose profits flowed through financial networks connected to Wall Street. The rise of modern finance cannot be separated from the violence that accompanied it. Every empire writes its ambitions into ledgers, and every ledger conceals a human cost. The geological mandate. As America industrialized, Manhattan faced a new challenge. The island was running out of space. There was only one direction left to grow: upward. Yet the decision to build skyscrapers was not simply an act of engineering. It was an act of submission, because Manhattan's destiny was determined by something buried far below the streets: Manhattan schist, a dense, ancient metamorphic rock formed hundreds of millions of years ago. In some places, it rises close to the surface. In others, it plunges deep underground. This invisible landscape dictated where towers could stand. The city above had to obey the geology below. Developers learned that the tallest buildings required foundations anchored directly into this bedrock. Steel alone was not enough. Concrete alone was not enough. The island demanded obedience, and obedience came at a cost. Men above the void. Few projects embodied that cost more than the Empire State Building. Construction began in 1930. The schedule was relentless. The structure rose at an astonishing rate of 4.5 stories per week. Workers balanced on narrow steel beams hundreds of meters above the city. No safety harnesses, no modern protections, only gravity waiting below. Mohawk ironworkers became legendary for their courage. Immigrants desperate for employment joined them. Together, they assembled 57,000 tons of structural steel. They drove glowing rivets into place, while icy winds tore across the skyline. Every floor represented another victory over height, but also another gamble with death. The skyscraper became a monument, not merely to ambition, but to sacrifice. Human bodies transformed geological opportunity into financial prestige. The hidden nervous system. Today, most people imagine finance as something digital: numbers on screens, algorithms, data, invisible transactions moving through cyberspace. But even the digital world requires physical infrastructure. Beneath Manhattan lies an intricate network of fiber optic cables. These glass threads form the nervous system of global finance. Buried beneath asphalt and concrete, they connect trading servers, data centers, and exchanges with extraordinary precision. For high-frequency traders, distance matters. Even a few meters of cable can create measurable delays. And in a world where milliseconds once mattered, the competition has now descended into microseconds. Modern algorithms can execute trades in roughly 38 microseconds. That is faster than a human can blink, faster than conscious thought, faster than meaningful oversight. At such speeds, markets cease to be human conversations. They become machine interactions, a landscape of mathematical reflexes. The result is unsettling. The prices of commodities, stocks, and currencies increasingly emerge from systems operating beyond human perception. We built machines to manage complexity. Then complexity outpaced our ability to understand the machines. The vault beneath the city. Yet despite all this digital sophistication, the global economy still craves something tangible, something heavy, something real. That need led to one of the most extraordinary construction projects in Manhattan's history. In 1924, workers blasted deep into the schist beneath Liberty Street. Their goal was not another skyscraper. It was a vault, a fortress buried beneath the city. Today, the Federal Reserve Bank of New York houses roughly 500,000 gold bars. Together, they represent hundreds of billions of dollars in value. The bars sit far below street level, behind steel doors, within concrete walls, protected by armed guards and elaborate security systems. It is a striking contradiction. The most advanced financial system ever created still relies on piles of metal extracted from the earth. Digital currencies may flash across screens. Electronic transactions may circle the globe in milliseconds. But somewhere deep underground, gold remains silently present, a physical reassurance, a reminder that trust alone is often not enough. The day the machine stopped for decades, the system appeared unstoppable. Markets expanded, credit flowed, wealth accumulated. Then came September 2008. Lehman Brothers collapsed. What followed was not merely a corporate bankruptcy, it was a systemic shock. The financial machine seized. Banks stopped trusting one another. Credit markets froze. Liquidity vanished. Within hours, panic spread across the globe. The effects reached far beyond Manhattan. Factories slowed production. Businesses canceled investments. Workers lost jobs. Families lost homes. In Nevada, foreclosure signs appeared across entire neighborhoods. In Guangzhou, export factories fell silent. Ships waited in ports. Supply chains fractured. The collapse revealed a terrifying truth. The global economy had become so interconnected that a failure on one island could destabilize lives thousands of kilometers away. A spreadsheet error in New York could become hunger somewhere else. The distance between cause and consequence had vanished. The rising tide. But financial crises are not Manhattan's greatest vulnerability. Markets can recover, banks can be rescued, currencies can be stabilized. Nature offers no such negotiation. In October 2012, Hurricane Sandy approached the eastern seaboard. Meteorologists issued warnings. Officials prepared emergency responses. Yet few fully understood what was coming. As the storm pushed toward New York, it carried an enormous surge of seawater. The ocean rose. Then it kept rising. When the surge reached Manhattan, it overwhelmed defenses. Water poured into subway entrances. Electrical systems failed. Backup generators drowned. Darkness spread through entire neighborhoods. Millions lost power. Hospitals evacuated patients. Residents found themselves trapped in high-rise buildings, without elevators, heating, or running water. The financial district itself was not spared. For a moment, the illusion of control shattered. The city that managed global risk could not control the sea. Physics ignored balance sheets. The ocean did not care about market capitalization. And Manhattan suddenly looked far less permanent than its skyline suggested. The Hostage Island. This is the paradox. At the heart of Manhattan, we imagine it as a place of power, a place where humanity dominates nature through engineering, technology, and finance. Yet every layer of that power rests upon conditions it cannot fully control. The bedrock must remain stable. The electrical grid must function. The cables must remain connected. The sea must stay outside the walls. Every system depends on geography, and geography never signed a contract. The island that directs global wealth is ultimately hostage to forces far older than economics. Stone, water, gravity, time. These forces shaped Manhattan long before the first trader arrived. They will remain long after the last trading floor closes. We spend our lives building cities that feel eternal. We cover the earth with steel, glass, and fiber optics. We convince ourselves that technology has freed us from nature, but it never has. Every empire ultimately borrows its power from the landscape beneath it, and borrowed power is never permanent. One day, every lease expires. When that moment comes, markets cannot negotiate with the ocean. Algorithms cannot bargain with rising tides. And skyscrapers cannot argue with stone. The sea and the bedrock will remain exactly what they have always been: patient, indifferent, waiting,